You have carried so much for so long. You can rest now. Let the air grow soft around you, as if the night itself is taking a slow breath. The noise of the day fades, leaving only the hum of stillness. In that silence, the body begins to remember what peace feels like, a quiet pulse, a rhythm older than words. Somewhere beyond the window, the world is dark, but not empty. It breathes with you. The stars drift like slow embers, and time loosens its grip. Pain, too, starts to loosen. It is no longer a storm, but a tide returning home. The mind stops trying to understand, and in that surrender, something tender unfolds, a knowing that you were never broken, only holding on too tightly to what was meant to pass. Carl Jung once described this as the night sea, the journey through darkness where rebirth begins. Nietzsche saw it as the courage to face despair and still choose to create meaning. Both spoke in different languages of the same thing, the art of letting go without losing yourself. Tonight, that journey is yours. No grand awakening, no heroic rise, just the gentle release of what no longer needs to stay. The room, the breath, the quiet, all conspire to remind you that healing doesn't roar, it whispers. And in the hush that follows, you begin to feel it. The slow return of something whole, something timeless, something that has always been waiting inside you. The room is small and quiet after a long day. The light from the phone flickers once, then fades back into shadow. Outside, the city hums like a distant ocean, constant, almost comforting in its rhythm. But when the screen finally goes dark, something else begins to speak. It is not the world that grows louder, but the space within. The mind, once full of motion, now fills itself with echoes. Unfinished thoughts, words left unsaid, memories that breathe quietly in forgotten corners. Silence in that moment feels alive. It has weight. It lingers. It asks questions we have postponed all day. Why did that still hurt? Why do I keep returning to what has already passed? Modern life leaves little room for this kind of quiet. We drown it beneath the sound of playlists, messages, and endless scrolling. We fill every pause with distraction, every moment of stillness with motion, as if silence were dangerous, as if the absence of noise could undo us. Yet what we fear is not the quiet itself, but what it contains. Within silence lies everything we have avoided, the grief we minimized, the joy we forgot to feel, the forgiveness we never offered. The mind builds noise the way a city builds lights, both to keep from seeing the dark. But the dark is not our enemy. It only reveals what was always there. Somewhere between one breath and the next, the person in that small room begins to feel it. The ache of being alone and the quiet comfort that follows once the body stops resisting. The sound of the clock softens. The hum of the refrigerator turns into a low rhythm, steady, like the heartbeat of the room itself. The thoughts still come, but slower now, dissolving into one another like ripples in deep water. There is no urgency left, no need to run. The air feels heavy with memories, yet each breath lightens it. The silence that once felt unbearable begins to shift. It is not a void, it is a mirror. It shows truth without judgment, not what is wrong, but what waits to be understood. And somewhere in that reflection, a realization dawns like dawn itself, soft and certain. The fear of silence was never about the quiet. It was the fear of finally hearing the voice beneath all the noise. Silence is not emptiness. It is the beginning of listening, Rain drips softly against the window pane, each drop tracing a path that fades before reaching the sill. A person sits nearby, still in thought, watching the grey sky blur the city into silence. The world outside seems calm, yet inside, something tightens. The mind replays what it cannot undo, the conversation that ended badly, the loss that came too soon, the moment that refused to go the way it should have. There is a quiet rebellion inside, a voice whispering, "This should not have happened." That small phrase, repeated in secret, is where suffering begins. It is not the event itself that keeps the wound open. It is the refusal to accept that it has already passed. Pain enters when life moves in one direction and the heart pulls the other way. To resist what is to fight with reality itself. And reality, unbothered, always wins. The mind clings like a hand gripping a rope. The tighter it holds, the deeper the burn. The rope is not the enemy, it only hurts because we refuse to let go. Each thought of it should have been different is another pull, another cut, another drop of blood that proves nothing but our own struggle against what already is. There is a strange comfort in resistance. It gives us the illusion of control, the feeling that we are doing something by refusing to accept. But resistance is a storm that circles in place. It changes nothing outside us, only disturbs what is within. When we resist, we stay tied to the moment we wish to escape, reliving it each time the mind reopens the scene. Look closely. Even now, the rain has not stopped falling, and yet the window no longer trembles. The world moves on effortlessly, without apology, without pause. Perhaps peace is not something we create, but something we uncover once the noise of resistance quiets. Acceptance is not surrender. It is the recognition that life is already happening, whether we approve or not. There is no weakness in letting go. To release the rope is not to forget, but to stop fighting the inevitable. The memory remains, but the pain changes shape. The body loosens, the air feels wider. The heart beats without defense. What once felt unbearable becomes something that simply is. Try this. Write down one thing you are still resisting. A name, an ending, a decision that felt unfair. Look at it gently, without judgment. Ask softly, if I stopped fighting this, what would happen? The question does not erase the past, but it opens a window in the mind, a space where air can move again. The rain outside begins to fade, leaving faint marks on the glass, like small reminders of release. The person by the window does not move yet, but their breath slows. The war inside has quieted, if only for a moment. In that pause, there is a truth that does not need to be forced or proven. That peace was never gone, only hidden beneath resistance. Peace begins where resistance ends. The rain has stopped, but the air still hums with its memory. A faint scent of wet earth drifts through the open window, soft and grounding. The person who once wrestled with their thoughts now sits quietly, hands resting on their chest. The room feels wider, not because it has changed, but because they have stopped running from it. For the first time in a long while, there is no urge to move, no desperate need to fix or flee. There is only the simple act of being here. Silence begins to reveal its true purpose, not as emptiness, but as a teacher. It does not demand or persuade. It waits. It teaches presence by refusing to entertain escape. In that stillness, the truth becomes visible, not as a threat, but as a quiet companion. What once felt unbearable begins to soften when looked at directly. The pain was never the enemy. It was simply asking to be seen. 3 slow breaths, one to feel the air enter, one to recognize the heart beneath the hand, one to notice how the mind still moves even when the body is still. Nothing to solve, nothing to analyze, only the rhythm of being alive. The silence stretches gently, like water settling after rain. The moment no longer feels heavy. It simply holds what it must hold. Everywhere we go, we are taught to chase, to fix the problem, to seek the next moment, to outthink the discomfort. Yet stillness is the art of staying with what is. It does not promise comfort, only clarity. To stay is not to resign. It is to meet reality without disguise. Jung once said that people will do anything to avoid facing their own soul. But when you finally stop escaping, you realize the soul was never something to fear. It was the home you left behind in search of safety. To stay means to listen without rushing toward an answer. To let the heartbeat speak louder than the mind. To notice the tiny movements within you. The rise of breath, the tremor of feeling, the quiet warmth beneath your hand. Stillness is not about freezing the world. It is about finding the world as it already is. In this stillness, truth arrives without drama. It does not strike, it unfolds. It whispers that life has never been against you. It only waits for you to stop fighting long enough to hear it. Every breath becomes a doorway, every pause a return. And in that return, the body learns again what peace feels like. Not victory, not relief, but gentle recognition. When the person finally opens their eyes, nothing around them has changed. The walls, the window, the faint trace of rain on glass. Yet everything inside feels quietly rearranged. The silence remains, but now it feels like company. The heart beats slower. The air moves easier. The world feels closer. Stillness is not waiting. It is meeting life where it already is. Night has settled once more, and the air feels heavy with thought. A faint hum from the street below drifts through the open window, but inside the room, quiet lingers like a slow tide. The person sits again, eyes lowered, the mind wandering through its own corridors. There are places it moves freely, bright, open, familiar. But there are also corners it avoids, small and dim, where memory gathers like dust. The darkness we fear rarely lives outside us. It hides within our reactions, in the moments we wish to forget. The sharp word spoken too fast, the silence we chose instead of honesty, the decisions that still leave a mark. Each one becomes a small shadow, waiting patiently in the attic of the mind. Jung once wrote, "The shadow contains everything we refuse to acknowledge." And perhaps this is why it follows us, not to haunt, but to remind. What we bury does not disappear. It simply waits for the courage of our return. Imagine the mind as an old house. Most days, we live on the ground floor, tidy, bright, organized. Guests come and go. The curtains are open and everything looks fine. But somewhere above, there is a small staircase leading to a locked door. Behind it lie the memories we swore we would never revisit. The air there is still. The light comes through in narrow bands. Yet if you listen, you can hear the faint hum of life. The parts of you that never stopped existing, only stopped being welcomed. Each regret, each shameful act, each old fear rests there quietly, not demanding forgiveness, only understanding. The mind calls it darkness, but in truth, it is only a room we forgot to clean. And like all neglected rooms, it doesn't ask for punishment, only presence. When we finally open the door, we do not find a monster, only the version of ourselves that was too small, too scared, too human to know better at the time. Try this. Remember one thing you still hide from yourself: a mistake, a word, a moment you wish could vanish. Then ask gently if this was not something wrong, but something not yet understood. What would it become? You may notice the memory shifting in tone. The edge dulls, the shame softens. It begins to look less like guilt and more like growth waiting to happen. To face the shadow is not to destroy it, but to integrate it, to let light and dark share the same breath. In doing so, we no longer divide ourselves into good and bad, worthy and unworthy. We become whole. The quiet corners of the mind, once feared, turn into places of deep rest, where honesty feels like warmth and forgiveness no longer needs an audience. Outside, the night continues without rush. The rain has long stopped, but the air still carries its echo. Inside, something begins to open: a door, a breath, a recognition that darkness was never exile. It was always an invitation. The darkness within is not punishment, it is invitation. Morning arrives slowly, filtered through a thin veil of grey light. The person stands before the window once again, the glass faintly fogged by breath. Outside, the world stirs awake. Footsteps on the pavement, a car passing, a door closing somewhere down the hall. Yet, as the reflection forms on the glass, the eyes that look back seem older, quieter, and perhaps a little more honest. People often believe they see others clearly, but in truth, they mostly meet themselves. The things that disturb us in someone else, the arrogance, the indifference, the need to be right, are often the same traits we have refused to see within. The world, for all its noise, is a mirror that never lies. It reflects, but it does not judge. What we call criticism of others often reveals an unspoken confession. When we recoil from something, it is worth asking, is it them I reject? Or is it something in me that I have not yet made peace with? Imagine walking through a gallery of mirrors. Each one distorts slightly, showing a version of you in a new form. Some kind, some cruel, some afraid. Each person we encounter is one of these mirrors. They do not create the reflection, they only make it visible. The irritation we feel, the hurt, the judgment, all are fragments of recognition. The soul sees itself and shivers, not out of fear, but because truth rarely arrives gently. Jung once observed that what we dislike in others often points to what we deny in ourselves. This is not accusation, but guidance. To see projection clearly is to recover a lost part of the self. When we understand the mirror, we stop needing to blame. Every reaction becomes a teacher. Every discomfort a chance to understand what the heart still resists. Think of the last time someone's words pierced too deeply or the silence felt unbearable. In that instant, the pain may have seemed to come from them, but beneath it lies something more intimate, an old wound being touched again. The mind rushes to defend, to accuse, to control the story. Yet, if we pause, if we breathe instead of react, a new question appears. What are they showing me that I still cannot accept in myself? This is the quiet work of reflection, not to find fault, but to reclaim awareness. Each mirror we meet on our path, whether gentle or harsh, helps us see more of what has remained hidden. The ones who challenge us most are often the ones who reveal our depth. Through them, we meet our own shadow in motion. The person at the window exhales softly, watching the fog on the glass fade and clear. The reflection remains, unjudging, simple, human. The world outside keeps moving, yet something inside has grown still. A recognition that life does not attack, it reflects. In that understanding, the walls between self and other begin to dissolve. Every look becomes a dialogue, every reaction a small awakening. Every reaction is a mirror held up to the soul. Evening folds itself gently around the room. The air is calm, yet something within still trembles. The person sits by the dim light of a single lamp, its glow flickering against the window pane. Outside, night gathers in quiet layers, and the reflection on the glass looks back like a stranger who has always been there. Seeing oneself clearly is not easy. It asks for more than thought. It asks for courage. To look into the dark is not to fight it, but to understand it. The darkness is not an intruder. It is the unspoken story of the self. It holds the things we avoid naming, the fears we bury, the anger we disguise, the desires we pretend not to feel. Most of the time, we turn away. We keep busy, talk louder, move faster, as if motion could make the truth disappear. But avoidance never frees us. It only extends the shadow's reach. Real courage is quiet. It is the act of staying when everything inside wants to flee. Jung once wrote that freedom comes from bringing what is unconscious into light. To see what hurts, what confuses, what feels shameful, not to punish it, but to recognize it, is the first step toward peace. When we dare to look, the pattern begins to break. The repetition loses its power. We stop reacting blindly and begin to choose consciously. The process does not need to be grand. It can start with a pen, a piece of paper, and a moment of honesty. Write down 3 things you have been avoiding: a memory, a person, a truth about yourself that still stings. Look at each one as if it were a teacher, not an enemy. Ask softly, what is this trying to show me? What lesson hides behind this discomfort? You may notice the heaviness change, like ice melting under gentle warmth. The courage to see does not demand perfection. It only asks that you stop looking away. When the eyes meet what has been hidden, light enters. The shadow doesn't vanish, but it softens. The story it carries begins to unfold into meaning. Each piece of pain reveals a thread of wisdom, that what once frightened you was never meant to destroy, only to awaken. Outside, the night deepens, but it feels less like an abyss and more like a shelter. The darkness no longer presses in, it holds space. Inside, the person's breath steadies. The heart slows its rhythm. The reflection on the window no longer looks like a stranger. It looks like someone returning home. To see is to reclaim power. To look directly is to end the cycle of avoidance that keeps pain alive. Healing does not begin with control. It begins with presence, the willingness to face what is, even when it shakes you. And in that moment of looking, fear turns to clarity, and clarity turns to quiet strength. Healing begins the moment you stop looking away. Morning light filters through thin curtains, pale and unhurried. Dust floats in the air like small pieces of memory, suspended between now and then. The person sits at the edge of the bed, eyes open but lost somewhere else, in a scene that feels both distant and painfully familiar. It is strange how certain moments return, not as memories, but as repetitions. The tone of a voice, the sting of rejection. The same argument played again in a different room, with different faces. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Most people live under this quiet spell. They believe life keeps happening to them, never realizing it is also happening from them, shaped by what lies unseen beneath awareness. The past, though long gone in time, still breathes through the present, replaying its old film reels in the theater of the mind. Every unhealed story finds a way to retell itself. Imagine life as an old movie projector, spinning its film over and over. Each reel holds a scene we refuse to finish, a disappointment we could not face, a love we could not hold, a fear we never named. The sound, the setting, even the actors may change, but the emotion stays the same. The unconscious repeats what the conscious has yet to understand. What looks like bad luck, what feels like destiny, is often just a pattern waiting to be seen. You may notice it in your relationships. The same feeling of being unseen, the same urge to please, the same ache of distance no matter who stands across from you. These emotions are not coincidences, they are signals. The body remembers what the mind forgets. When we find ourselves reliving similar pain, it is not punishment, it is memory calling for resolution. The key is not to run from the pattern, but to recognize it. Awareness breaks the loop. The moment we say, "This feels familiar," we begin to wake from the script. Ask yourself, what emotion keeps returning in my life? What does it want me to understand? Do not rush to answer, just listen. The unconscious speaks softly, through the weight in your chest, through the hesitation before you speak, through the longing that never quite fades. In this listening, compassion becomes possible. You begin to see the child within the adult, the one who learned love by earning it, who mistook silence for safety, who believed rejection was truth. The pattern does not exist to trap you, but to guide you back to that forgotten self. Each repetition is an invitation to stop acting out the old story and start reading it with new eyes. Outside, a breeze moves the curtain. The film has not stopped playing, but its meaning has changed. The person sitting there now knows they can step out of the scene. The projector keeps spinning, but the watcher has awakened. What repeats no longer binds, it teaches. The past loses its claim, not because it is erased, but because it is finally understood. What repeats is what still asks to be understood. Afternoon light bends through the window, soft and golden, tracing quiet patterns across the floor. The person sits still, watching the shadows shift like slow-moving tides. Somewhere beneath the calm surface of the moment, an old ache stirs. The same feeling that returns again and again, wearing different faces, speaking in the same tone. It feels personal, but it is not. It is familiar. We do not become attached to pain because we enjoy it. We return to it because we recognize it. The mind confuses familiarity with safety. What it has known longest, it believes it can survive. So it clings, not out of pleasure, but out of habit. A certain silence after conflict, a way of pulling back when love feels too close, a pattern of expecting disappointment before joy. The body remembers these things like old songs. They make no sense, yet they feel like home. To the conscious mind, this seems irrational. Why hold on to what hurts? But the unconscious has its own logic. Pain once served a purpose. It protected us from rejection, from chaos, from the unbearable unknown. To let go of that pain is to step into uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous when you have built your identity around surviving. The mind whispers, "At least I know this hurt. At least it's mine." Existential philosophy reminds us that freedom begins not with comfort, but with choice. We are free the moment we decide to act differently, even if the new path feels strange. The familiar pain is not loyalty. It is fear disguised as safety. Each time we repeat an old reaction, the anger, the withdrawal, the silence, we reinforce the illusion that only the known can protect us. But every cycle can be interrupted, and every habit can be softened if we pause long enough to see it forming. When the familiar pain rises again, do not rush to push it away or fall into it. Take 3 slow seconds. 1 breath in, 1 breath out, 1 breath to notice the space between. In that space, awareness appears. The body relaxes. The mind loosens its grip on what it thought was protection. Even a small change, a gentler word, a slower response, a softer thought, can begin to rewrite the pattern. Awareness does not erase the past, but it opens the possibility of a new future. Outside, the light fades a little, but the room feels warmer. The person sits with that warmth, realizing that safety was never found in repetition, but in presence. Familiarity can comfort the body, but it cannot free the soul. The act of choosing differently, however small, is the first quiet act of liberation. Pain no longer needs to define us once we see why we return to it. What once seemed inevitable becomes optional. The pattern loses its power when it is met with consciousness instead of reaction. And in that subtle shift, that moment of staying awake inside the familiar, something changes. The heart begins to trust not what it knows, but what it can now create. Familiarity is not safety. Awareness is. Evening descends quietly, and the room feels like a small theater preparing for another performance. The same thoughts take their marks. The same emotions wait in the wings. The mind knows its script by heart, how to react, how to defend, how to replay what is familiar. But somewhere behind the curtain, a softer presence begins to stir. It doesn't want to act this time. It only wants to watch. Life often feels like a series of rehearsed scenes. The cues are invisible, yet we follow them perfectly. A tone of voice ignites anger, a look awakens shame, a silence triggers retreat. Before we even realize it, we are inside the play again, repeating the same lines we promised never to say. But the moment we become aware of the script, something miraculous happens. The actor steps back, and the observer appears. Imagine standing behind the curtain of a stage. Through the small opening, you can see the characters moving, their faces full of emotion, their words echoing across the empty seats. You know the story. You know how it ends. But now, you are not part of it. You are watching it unfold, calm and unseen. This is the gift of awareness. The ability to witness the drama of life without losing yourself in its noise. When emotion rises, the rush of fear, the sharpness of anger, the ache of loneliness, do not rush to control it. Simply notice it and whisper inwardly, "A pattern is playing." Those 3 words hold quiet power. They separate who you are from what is happening. They remind you that feelings move through you, but they are not you. The storm may pass over the surface, but the depth beneath remains untouched. Awareness does not suppress emotion. It gives it room to breathe. The observer does not judge or intervene. It allows everything to appear and dissolve naturally. Each time we return to this inner seat, we grow less reactive and more free. The mind may still create its stories, but we no longer have to believe them. Like an audience member, we can watch the scenes play out, learn from them, and still remain at peace. Jung believed that consciousness expands when we stop identifying with the contents of the mind. To observe the inner play is to awaken from it, to see that the one who feels pain is not the whole of you, but only one of your many characters. Behind every reaction lies the same awareness, patient and vast, waiting to be remembered. Outside, night has deepened, and the city hums softly in the distance. The person sits in the dim light, breathing slowly, no longer fighting the thoughts that move through. That inner stage remains alive, but the watcher is awake now. There is no need to silence the performance, only to stay behind the curtain and see it clearly. When you realize you are not the scene, but the awareness watching it unfold, the story loses its grip. The play continues, but its weight is gone. What remains is quiet understanding, the gentle strength of knowing you were never trapped, only unobservant. You are not the scene. You are the awareness watching it unfold. The mind is rarely silent. Even in stillness, it performs. Somewhere inside, a voice rehearses its lines, defending, explaining, comparing, proving. The ego, ever restless, stands at the center of the stage. It wants to be seen, to be right, to be remembered, and so it keeps speaking, long after the conversation has ended, long after the audience has left. The ego is the actor who cannot bear an empty theater. It performs not for applause, but for survival. Under the bright light of attention, it feels alive. When ignored, it trembles in the dark. Nietzsche once said, "Man is something that must be overcome." He was not speaking of destruction, but of transcendence, the quiet courage to step out of the role and remember the one who has always been watching. Imagine an old stage glowing under soft light. The red curtain hangs heavy. The seats stretch into the dark, empty and waiting. At the center stands the actor, proud, expressive, desperate to fill the silence. It delivers every line with passion, not realizing no one is listening. The fear is not of failure, but of stillness. To stop speaking would mean to meet the dark, to face what exists beyond identity. The ego's need to be right is rarely about truth. It is about fear, the fear of disappearing. Every argument, every correction, every attempt to prove value is its way of saying, "See me, do not let me fade." And yet, each time we defend, we step further from peace. The light grows brighter, the gestures louder, but the theater remains empty. There is another way. When the impulse to react rises, when the inner actor starts to speak, try silence instead. Do not suppress. Simply pause. Let the sentence dissolve before it leaves your tongue. The ego cannot survive in stillness because stillness offers no audience. In that quiet, something deeper begins to breathe, awareness, soft and wordless. The play loses its urgency and truth no longer needs to perform. To be silent in the face of provocation is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the art of letting the scene play without needing to take the stage. When we choose quiet over victory, we step closer to freedom. The ego's script fades, and what remains is clarity, the simple understanding that nothing real can be lost when we stop defending who we think we are. The person sits in the half-lit room, eyes unfocused, breath steady. The mind still offers its lines. You should explain. You should be heard. You should win. But you no longer take the bait. The play continues somewhere in the distance, while they remain behind the curtain, watching, unmoved. The silence no longer feels like defeat. It feels like peace returning home. The lights on the stage dim slowly, leaving only the hum of quiet air. In the absence of applause, a new awareness arises, vast, still, and without need. The actor bows and fades into shadow. The observer remains, calm and complete. Sometimes, the most powerful truth is spoken without a single word. The ego dissolves not through struggle, but through the gentle act of silence. Rain returns that evening, soft and rhythmic, a steady whisper against the window. The person sits with a cup of tea growing cold beside them, replaying a familiar story in their mind. The one where they were wronged, misunderstood, or forgotten. Each retelling feels comforting at first, like revisiting an old wound just to remind oneself it was real. Yet beneath that comfort, something heavy lingers. The subtle tightening of the chest, the quiet resentment that keeps the past alive. The feeling of being a victim can be deceptively gentle. It whispers of innocence, of moral safety. You did nothing wrong. The world simply hurt you. But hidden in that tenderness is a trap. To believe we are forever the wounded one is to live chained to the moment of injury. It keeps us small, protected, and powerless at once. The ego wears this mask well, the victim mask. It says, I am right. I am pure. I am the one who deserves better. And yet, this very conviction is what keeps freedom out of reach. When we blame, we surrender. Every time we point outward, we give away our power to change. The mind insists that if others were different, we would finally be at peace. But peace built on conditions is never peace at all. It is dependence dressed as righteousness. Freedom begins the moment we stop needing to be right. Nietzsche once hinted that suffering itself is not what breaks a person. It is the way they interpret it. To frame pain as injustice alone is to freeze it in place. But when we take ownership of our experience, the same pain becomes material for transformation. It stops being a wound and becomes a doorway. The story of the victim dissolves when we remember that we are also the author. Imagine a play in which the same scene repeats endlessly. The same betrayal, the same heartbreak, the same unfair ending. At first, we blame the script, then the actors, then the audience. But the truth is simpler. The play continues because the actor never leaves the stage. To step off, even once, is to reclaim the power to rewrite. Try this. Take one story you often tell, a moment when someone hurt you, ignored you, failed you. Write it again, but this time, remove the role of the victim. Keep the facts, but shift the perspective. What did you learn? What power did you discover in surviving it? What part of you grew stronger because of it? The story does not lose its truth. It gains depth. It becomes less about what happened and more about who you became through it. Outside, the rain begins to slow, each drop landing softer than before. Inside, the person sits in silence, the tea now cool, but the air lighter. The mind still remembers the story, but the charge has faded. The need to be right feels distant, replaced by something calmer. A quiet recognition that being free matters more than being justified. The ego always seeks validation. The soul seeks release. And sometimes release comes not through revenge or vindication, but through surrender, The moment we stop telling the world what it owes us, we begin to see what we already have. The rain outside pauses, and the reflection in the window looks back, unguarded, peaceful, whole. Freedom begins the moment you stop needing to be right. Night drapes itself gently over the world, soft and unhurried. The lights of the city shimmer in the distance, like thoughts that refuse to fade. Inside a quiet room, someone finally sets their phone down. The screen goes dark, and with it, the steady stream of distraction disappears. For the first time that day, there is nothing to check, nothing to fix, nothing to prove. Only the sound of breathing remains, slow, fragile, real. To surrender is often misunderstood. The ego calls it defeat, a collapse, a loss of control. But true surrender is not the end of strength. It is its purest form. It is the quiet trust that life continues even when you stop steering. It is the knowing that the river flows whether you fight the current or not. The power of surrender lies not in effort, but in alignment. A gentle bow to the rhythm that was always guiding you. Imagine a river after a storm. The water rushes wild and brown, filled with branches and leaves, everything pulled along by its momentum. If the river could think, it might panic, believing it must control every turn, hold every branch, force the direction of its flow. But the river does not think. It simply moves. Its grace lies in its surrender to gravity. The pull that guides it is not weakness. It is nature itself. Human life follows the same law. We exhaust ourselves trying to control what cannot be contained. The outcome, the timing, the way others see us. The more we cling, the heavier the current feels. But when we release our grip, something remarkable happens. The flow carries us anyway, not toward chaos, but toward clarity. The moment we stop demanding certainty, life begins to reveal its quiet intelligence. Jung once observed that the greatest transformations happen when the ego yields to something greater than itself. That yielding is not submission. It is participation in a larger harmony. The universe does not ask for struggle. It asks for presence. To surrender is to meet existence as it is, not as a battlefield, but as a dance. Try this. Tonight, let the world go quiet. No screens, no music, no noise. Sit for 10 minutes and simply breathe. Feel how life continues even in stillness. The chest rises. The air enters. The heart beats faithfully without command. Each breath is proof that surrender does not mean losing control. It means remembering that you never needed it to begin with. Outside, a breeze moves gently through the open window. It touches the curtain, the candle flame, the skin of the one sitting there. Nothing is forced. Everything moves because it must. Within that movement lies peace, not earned, not constructed, simply revealed. The body softens, the mind loosens, and what remains is quiet awareness, watching the world flow without resistance. Letting go has never meant giving up. It has always meant returning, to trust, to balance, to the natural rhythm of being alive. When you stop pushing, life does not stop with you. It meets you where you are, carries you forward, and whispers through every breath. You were never meant to control the river. You were meant to flow with it. Letting go is not losing. It is returning. The night has settled deeply, and the room is still. The person sits on the edge of the bed, shoulders slightly tense, jaw tight, as if holding on to a thought that never leaves. There is no noise, no immediate worry, yet the body feels heavy, like it knows something the mind refuses to name. Beneath the surface of ordinary calm, the body is remembering, Emotions do not vanish when ignored. They settle quietly in the body, stored in muscles, in breath, in the rhythm of the heartbeat. Fear can live in the shoulders, keeping them lifted even when the danger is gone. Sadness hides in the chest, shortening each inhale until breathing feels like effort. Anger curls itself into the stomach, waiting for release. The mind tries to explain these sensations: a bad posture, a long day, a lack of rest. But a truth runs deeper. The body speaks the language of everything we never said aloud. Existential philosophy reminds us that the body is the first home of the soul, the vessel through which experience becomes memory. To live fully means not only to think, but to feel. Yet, in a world that prizes control, many learn to silence the body, to distrust its signals. We medicate discomfort, drown exhaustion with noise, disguise tension with productivity. But the body does not forget. It continues to whisper through fatigue, through pain, through restlessness at night. Imagine the body as a quiet archive. Every emotion, every touch, every unspoken moment is filed away in its own corner. When we finally slow down, these archives begin to open. A sound, a scent, or a simple word can awaken something buried for years. The heart races, the breath shortens, the throat tightens, and we call it anxiety, not realizing it is memory asking to be felt. The body does not seek to harm, it seeks to be heard. The next time emotion rises like a wave, resist the urge to analyze. Instead, turn inward and ask, what is my body saying? Maybe the tension in your chest is a story of grief never expressed. Maybe the ache in your neck is years of unshed words. Maybe the exhaustion is not weakness, but the body's quiet protest against pretending. Listening to it is not weakness, it is reconciliation. In that act of listening, healing begins. Sit in silence for a few moments. Let the breath move naturally. Notice where it stops. The body will tell you where you hold the past. You do not have to fix it. You only have to witness it. Awareness itself begins to soften the weight. The shoulders lower. The breath deepens. The heart, unguarded, starts to beat with steadier rhythm. Outside, the night hums with distant life. A passing car, a faint breeze through trees. Inside, another rhythm emerges, the quiet dialogue between mind and flesh. For the first time, they are not in conflict, but in conversation. The mind no longer commands, it listens, and the body, long silenced, finally speaks. What it says is simple. You are safe now. You can rest. You do not need to hold it all anymore. Every ache, every tightness, every breath is not an enemy. It is a message. When you learn to listen, the body stops screaming and begins to sing again. The body speaks what the mind cannot. A quiet morning begins, light pressing gently through the window. The world outside is already moving, but inside, time feels slower, measured not by clocks, but by breath. The person sits still, hands resting loosely on the knees, eyes half closed. Somewhere in the chest, a familiar ache hums softly. It is not sharp, not loud, just present, the kind of feeling that has followed them for years. The instinct is to ask why, to trace its source, to build a story around it. But today, they do not. Today, they simply feel. Pain is not the enemy. The story we build around it is. The mind loves narrative. It needs meaning, structure, reason. This hurts because they left. I feel heavy because I failed. But the truth of emotion is simpler than that. Feelings exist not to be explained, but to be experienced. They are visitors, not verdicts. When we stop assigning them a moral value, good or bad, justified or foolish, we begin to understand them as part of the natural movement of life. Imagine a drop of rain sliding down a window pane. It doesn't ask why it falls. It doesn't try to reverse its course. It simply follows gravity, becoming what it must become. Emotion works the same way. When allowed to move freely, it completes its cycle, rising, peaking, fading. But when we interfere, when we label, judge, or build a story, the drop freezes in place. It never reaches the ground. The energy remains trapped, repeating the same loop until we let it flow. Existential thought reminds us that awareness precedes meaning. To be aware of a feeling without needing to define it is a radical act of presence. When we stop narrating pain, we remove its anchor to the past and future. All that remains is the pure immediacy of experience, this breath, this sensation, this pulse in the chest. The moment becomes honest again, stripped of interpretation. Try this small practice. Sit somewhere quiet for 5 minutes. Close your eyes and turn your attention inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Then name it. One word only. Warm, tight, heavy, hollow. Do not tell its story. Do not assign it a reason. Simply call it what it is. This is not analysis. It is witnessing. When you name it without narration, the feeling often shifts, softens, or moves. Like a cloud drifting across the sky, it changes shape once it is seen. The person sitting in the room breathes slowly, the ache in their chest no longer demanding an explanation. It simply exists, a guest at the table of awareness. For the first time, they do not push it away or invite it to stay. They just share silence. The body loosens, the mind quiets. The story loses its power, and in its place appears something cleaner, the raw truth of being alive. Pain was never meant to punish, it was meant to pass. By feeling without analysis, we give it permission to do what it was always meant to do: move through. The soul learns not by reasoning, but by listening. And when we stop narrating every ache, we begin to discover the calm beneath it, the quiet rhythm of existence that never needed a story to be real. Name it, don't narrate it. The afternoon sky stretches wide and pale, a quiet expanse without urgency. A few clouds drift lazily across it, forming and dissolving in slow motion. The person standing by the window watches them, realizing how effortlessly they appear and vanish. There is no resistance, no negotiation, only movement. The sky doesn't cling to the clouds, nor mourn their passing. It simply remains, vast, open, unchanged. Every feeling that has ever lived inside us follows the same law. Joy, sorrow, fear, longing. Each rises, peaks, and fades. No emotion lasts forever, yet the mind forgets this truth and fights against impermanence as if it were betrayal. When happiness arrives, we grasp it tightly, afraid it will leave. When sadness visits, we resist it, convinced it will never end. Both reactions keep us trapped. To heal is to remember that everything moves. To suffer is to forget. Impermanence is not cruelty. It is compassion in disguise. It reminds us that pain will not stay, but neither will pleasure. The purpose is not to hold, but to experience. To be present for the passage, not the permanence. Existential thought teaches that acceptance of impermanence is not resignation, but liberation. To accept the transient nature of things is to stop trying to freeze time and begin learning how to live inside it. Imagine the mind as an ocean. Each emotion is a wave rising from its depth, some gentle, some wild. When a storm comes, the waves crash, foam, and roar, and we believe the sea itself is broken. But the storm always passes. Beneath the surface, the water remains whole. Healing begins when we stop trying to stop the waves and instead remember we are the ocean, not the storm. When emotion rises, whisper softly, "This too shall pass." It is not a denial of pain, but a reminder of perspective. It acknowledges that what feels infinite is, in truth, a visitor. Anger cools, fear fades, grief softens. The heart, though bruised, finds rhythm again. Time, gentle and patient, does what the mind cannot. It carries everything forward. Try a small practice tonight. When a feeling overwhelms you, pause before naming it as good or bad. Breathe. Watch it the way you might watch a cloud drifting overhead. Notice how, even within a minute, it shifts in shape or tone. Emotion is motion. It was never meant to be static. Each time you observe it without resistance, you honor impermanence. You allow the wave to complete its journey back to stillness. Outside, the last of the clouds dissolves into pale gold light. The person at the window takes a slow breath. The heaviness in their chest is still there, but it feels lighter, less personal, more like weather. They understand now that feelings are not prisons, but seasons. None define them, all pass through them. What remains is the sky itself, the awareness that endures through every change. Healing is not about escaping emotion, but about trusting its rhythm. Like the tide, it comes and goes, reminding us that even the storm serves the calm that follows. Nothing stays. Nothing needs to. The sky does not hate the clouds. It lets them go. And in doing so, it stays infinite. Every wave returns to stillness. The night air carries the faint scent of rain, cool and metallic. A candle flickers in a corner of the room, its small flame steady against the dark. The person sits nearby, notebook open, pen resting idle above the page. There is a silence that feels both heavy and alive, the kind that arrives after long struggle when the noise of resistance has finally quieted. Within that silence lies the first truth. Pain was never the enemy. It was the beginning of transformation. Suffering is the raw material of wisdom. Every wound, every heartbreak, every collapse carries a secret within it. The possibility of refinement, like metal under flame. The self is shaped not in comfort, but in heat. Alchemists once believed lead could be turned into gold if only it endured the right fire. The psyche works the same way. Pain, when faced consciously, does not destroy. It purifies. The ego softens, the illusions burn away, and what remains is something lighter, clearer, truer. But most people run from the fire. They mistake it for punishment rather than process. They want healing without burning, change without surrender. Yet it is the friction that reveals strength. The soul does not grow by avoiding difficulty. It grows by meeting it and discovering it can survive. Every fall, every loss, every moment of despair carries the potential to become the forge that tempers the spirit. Jung once wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Pain performs this sacred work. It drags us into the depths so we can see what still hides there. The darkness forces confrontation. The fire of experience melts pretense and pride, leaving only essence behind. What remains after the burning is not weaker, it is whole. Take a moment to look back at your own journey. Write down 3 moments that once shattered you: the breakup, the failure, the betrayal. Then, after each, add the phrase, "And because of it, I learned." Watch how the narrative shifts. What was once pure suffering becomes revelation. The wound becomes the doorway. The scar becomes the map. The moment you name what was gained, the pain changes shape. It no longer feels like an accident. It becomes an initiation. Imagine again that candle flame. The wax does not fight its melting. It surrenders to it. And through that surrender, it gives light. Pain serves the same purpose. It dissolves what is rigid so that something luminous can emerge. The power you seek was never outside you. It was forged each time you broke and chose to continue anyway. Outside, the wind moves through the trees, soft and constant. Inside, the candle burns lower, the flame smaller now but steadier. The person closes their notebook, no longer weighed down by the memory of suffering. The same experiences that once felt like ruin now feel like teachers. Each one left behind not emptiness, but understanding. Pain does not end you. It remakes you. It strips away what was borrowed and gives back what is real. It teaches endurance, humility, compassion, the quiet powers that last long after the fire has gone. When you no longer resist the heat, you realize it was never meant to destroy, only to refine. Pain is not the end. It is the forge. Dawn approaches quietly, the first light soft and uncertain, spreading across the floor like a slow confession. The world outside stirs awake, but within the room, time holds its breath. The person sits by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that has already gone cold. They are not seeking happiness, that fleeting brightness that comes and goes. What they seek is meaning, something deep enough to steady them when life grows heavy. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." In that single sentence lies the heart of endurance. Happiness can fade when the weather changes, when the people shift, when luck runs thin. But meaning holds. It gives shape to suffering, purpose to pain. Without it, even joy feels hollow. With it, even hardship can be endured with grace. Pain without meaning is chaos. Pain with meaning becomes transformation. It is not that the hurt lessens, but that it gains direction. When we begin to ask, why did this happen for me rather than to me? We step into the quiet power of perspective. Every wound, every loss, every unanswered question carries a hidden message. Life does not waste experience. It writes in a language only reflection can read. Imagine each scar as a symbol carved upon the skin of time. At first, it looks random, senseless, cruel. But step back and patterns emerge. Lines connecting to lessons, wounds forming constellations of insight. Meaning is what connects them, turning scattered pain into coherent story. Without it, we wander. With it, we heal. Existential thought teaches that we are meaning makers by nature. The world doesn't hand us purpose neatly wrapped. We must create it from the fragments of our experience. This creation is not denial, but art, the alchemy of the spirit. To assign meaning to suffering is not to romanticize it. It is to reclaim authorship. It is to say, I may not control what happens, but I can decide what it means. That choice alone transforms pain into power. Try this practice. Choose one memory that still aches when you touch it. A betrayal, a loss, a disappointment. Instead of asking, why me? Ask what for. Write down what that pain was trying to teach. Did it make you more honest, softer, stronger? Did it show you what truly matters? Every answer, however small, rewrites the narrative. The event remains, but its meaning evolves. You stop being the victim of the story and become its interpreter. Outside, morning light has deepened. The tea has gone cold, yet its warmth remains in the hands that hold it. The person closes their eyes and takes a slow breath. The ache in their chest is still there, but now it speaks, not in words, but in understanding. Every hardship becomes less a punishment and more a message from the soul, a reminder of who they are becoming. Meaning is the bridge between pain and wisdom. It does not erase the hurt, it redeems it. It gives reason to endure, language to express, and direction to move forward. To live without happiness is hard. To live without meaning is impossible. When the wound becomes a word, the suffering turns into song. The heart, once fractured, begins to hum again, not with joy, but with truth. And in that quiet melody lies healing, the kind that no pleasure could ever teach. Meaning transforms pain into wisdom. After the storm, the world does not celebrate, it exhales. The rain stops and the air carries that tender scent of earth, clean, calm, forgiving. The trees stand still, leaves heavy with quiet light. In that stillness, something subtle unfolds, the beginning of renewal. Not loud, not grand, but sure. Rebirth never roars, it whispers. Every ending, no matter how painful, leaves behind the faint outline of a beginning. But the mind, accustomed to noise and urgency, misses it. We expect transformation to announce itself, thunder, revelation, applause. Yet real rebirth is modest. It happens softly, in the quiet after surrender, when the heart stops fighting what has already fallen apart. The silence that follows loss is not empty. It is womb-like, preparing to give shape to what comes next. Think of dawn after a long night of rain. The light does not argue with the darkness. It simply rises, slowly, evenly, inevitably. That is how healing works. You wake one morning and realize the ache has softened. You remember the hurt, but it no longer defines you. The world looks the same, yet feels different, wider, lighter, more breathable. It is not that life became easier. It is that you became gentler with it. Jung once suggested that renewal is not about becoming someone new, but remembering the parts of ourselves we had forgotten. Each breakdown removes what was false, the masks, the defenses, the stories we used to protect the fragile truth of who we are. The destruction feels violent, but it is cleansing. Like the rain washing the air, it clears space for authenticity to return. What is reborn is not the person we wish to be, but the one we were meant to remember. To practice this renewal, begin each morning with a single breath. Before the day begins, before the thoughts arrive, imagine yourself as the rising sun, not burning, not rushing, just rising. Let that image live quietly inside you. Feel warmth return to your chest, light to your eyes, space to your breath. Rebirth is not about effort, it is about permission. To be here, to begin again, to exist without the weight of what came before. The person sits by the window as the first light spills through the curtains. Yesterday's exhaustion lingers, but it no longer feels sharp. The hour hums faintly, a reminder that something has shifted, not in the world, but within. They sip warm water, feel its path downward, steady and slow. In that simple act, life feels new, not because it changed, but because they did. True rebirth happens quietly when we no longer seek to prove, perform, or possess. It comes when we stop demanding that life be different and start allowing it to be enough. In the gentle acceptance of what is, something luminous emerges. peace, presence, aliveness. It does not announce itself, but it endures. The storm was never meant to punish. It was meant to prepare the ground for growth. And as dawn spreads through the soft blue sky, the truth settles in. You do not need to start over. You already have. Every breath that follows pain is a form of resurrection. Rebirth does not roar, it whispers. Night falls softly, the world folding into its own hush. A single candle burns in the corner, its light trembling like a small heart still awake. The room feels larger than usual, not because anything has changed, but because silence has arrived. For many, this is the moment they reach for a screen, a voice, a distraction, anything to fill the space. Yet there comes a time when one must learn to sit within that space and listen, not for sound, but for oneself. Loneliness is not the absence of company. It is the presence of self, waiting to be noticed. Solitude, when entered consciously, is not a punishment, but a return. It is the art of learning to inhabit your own skin without the noise of validation. The empty room is not truly empty. It hums with every breath, every heartbeat, every quiet thought that rises when the world finally stops speaking. Imagine a room without music, and yet every echo becomes a note. The refrigerator hum, the soft creak of a chair, the rhythm of your breath. Together, they form a kind of private symphony. This is what happens when silence is no longer feared but welcomed. The same solitude that once felt hollow begins to vibrate with meaning. What was once void becomes canvas. Jung once wrote that the meeting with oneself is the beginning of all wisdom. But to meet oneself, one must first stop running. The constant motion of modern life, the scrolling, the messaging, the background noise, keeps us from noticing the most important presence of all. The self does not shout. It waits quietly, like a candle in a still room, patient and unwavering. Solitude teaches sufficiency. It reminds us that peace does not come from being seen, but from seeing. That love, when it begins within, no longer depends on permission to exist. Loneliness asks, "Who will hold me?" Solitude answers, "You already are." The shift between the two is not found in company but in awareness. To be alone is to meet the mirror without disguise and discover that it reflects not emptiness but depth. Try this practice tonight. Turn off the devices, let the world fade to its natural quiet. Light a candle and watch its flame, not with judgment, but with presence. Feel the breath move through you, steady and warm. Notice how the stillness changes shape the longer you stay. At first, it may feel foreign, even uncomfortable, but give it time. Within 10 minutes, the silence begins to speak. It tells you that you are here, that you have always been enough, that nothing more is needed. Outside, the city continues its restless hum, unaware that within this small, dimly lit room, something sacred is unfolding. The person sitting there does not look enlightened. They are simply breathing, simply being. Yet in that simple act, an ancient truth awakens. Peace is not found in noise or in others. It is found in the quiet willingness to be with oneself completely. Solitude is not absence, it is presence amplified. Morning light spills softly across the table, tracing golden lines through the dust. A porcelain bowl rests there, cracked but mended. It seems filled with delicate veins of gold. It is beautiful, not despite its fractures, but because of them. In Japan, this art is called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with precious metal. revealing that what was once shattered can become even more radiant when restored with care. The same is true of the human spirit. We spend much of life chasing perfection, believing it to be the key to love, to belonging, to worthiness. The world teaches us to polish, to hide our flaws behind filters and smiles, to speak only in ways that sound complete. But perfection is sterile. It leaves no space for breath, no room for life to enter. To be human is to be unfinished, to carry cracks and contradictions that remind us we are alive. Jung once said, "I would rather be whole than good." Wholeness is not the absence of error, but the acceptance of it. The gentle acknowledgement that the light only reaches us through the places we've been broken. The pursuit of perfection is exhausting because it demands denial. We edit ourselves into fragments, discarding everything that doesn't fit the image we think we should be. Yet the self that remains after such trimming is incomplete. Wholeness, by contrast, invites everything in. The anger and the kindness, the courage and the fear, the joy and the grief. It asks nothing of you but honesty. When you stop trying to be flawless, you start becoming real. Imagine the soul as that porcelain bowl, cracked by experience, mended by time. Every scar tells a story of survival, every imperfection a lesson in humility. The gold that fills the seams is awareness, the soft light of understanding that comes only from living fully. You do not need to erase the cracks to be worthy. You need to see them as part of your design. Try a simple practice. Take a piece of paper and write one thing you dislike about yourself. A habit, a fear, a flaw you've long tried to hide. Beneath it, write the words, "And that makes me human." Notice what happens in the body when you do. The tension eases, the breath deepens. This small act of acceptance, though simple, carries power. It breaks the spell of perfection and replaces it with compassion. Outside, the day begins to stir, imperfect as ever. Clouds drifting unevenly, a bird's call slightly off rhythm. Yet there is harmony in the imperfection, a balance found not in symmetry, but in truth. The person at the table runs a finger along the golden seam of the bowl, tracing the beauty of something once broken. It feels warm, alive. In that moment, they understand. The goal was never to return to how things were, but to integrate what they have become. To be whole is not to be without flaw. It is to hold every part of yourself, the light and the shadow, and see that together they form something beautiful, something honest, something human. The cracks do not ruin you, they reveal you. Wholeness is beauty unpolished. The afternoon light drifts through the open window, gentle and gold. The curtains move slightly with the wind, breathing in and out like a calm body at rest. Somewhere outside, a bird lands on a branch, still for a moment before it lifts into the air. Its flight is not frantic. It moves as though gravity itself has loosened its grip. Freedom, it seems, is not about the sky being open. It is about no longer fearing the fall. For much of life, we mistake freedom for escape. We imagine it as distance from responsibility, as movement without restraint. But Nietzsche once suggested a quieter truth. True freedom is not the absence of limits, but the absence of fear. It is not about what we can do, but about what no longer controls us. When we no longer fear ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, the world outside suddenly feels vast enough to breathe in. Forgiveness is one of the secret doors to this kind of freedom. Not the shallow forgiveness that tries to forget, but the deep kind that understands. When you forgive, you're not erasing the past. You are releasing your grip on it. Holding resentment is like holding a burning coal, hoping the other will feel the heat. But the one who burns is always you. Freedom begins the moment the hand opens, the coal falls, and the pain cools. The same applies to control. The tighter we hold life, the less of it we can truly experience. We try to manage every outcome, predict every reaction, secure every possibility, as if certainty was safety. Yet safety has never been the point. Growth happens in uncertainty, and peace happens when we stop demanding that life obey our plans. Like the bird, we were never meant to command the wind, only to trust it. Each day offers a chance to practice this kind of release. Take a quiet moment and write down one thing you no longer need to control: an outcome, a person, a feeling. Then sit for a minute and imagine letting it go, as if the paper itself were dissolving in your hands. Notice the lightness that follows. It is not dramatic. It is subtle, like air returning to a room that had been sealed too long. This is the texture of inner freedom, soft, invisible, but unmistakable. Inside the room, the person sits with eyes half closed, listening to the hum of the world outside. Nothing monumental has changed. The same sky, the same body, the same story. Yet something inside feels unshackled. The need to control, to win, to prove, it has quieted. What remains is space. And in that space, there is ease. Freedom is not about running farther. It is about standing still without chains. It is not loud, not triumphant, not something to show. It lives in the silent moments between breaths, the peace of knowing you no longer have to resist what is. Outside, the bird circles once more before landing again, unhurried, unafraid. It does not fly because the sky is wide. It flies because it trusts the air to hold it. Freedom is inner silence. The morning light spills gently through the curtains, soft and golden, brushing against your face as if to say, "You made it." The night has passed. The quiet that once felt endless now hums with a subtle warmth. You open your eyes, not to a new world, but to the same one seen differently, slower, kinder, clearer. There are no fireworks, no applause, no grand arrival. Only the still, steady realization that you no longer need to prove anything to exist. You have walked through the dark, and yet the dark was not wasted. It softened you. It taught you to see, not with your eyes, but with your awareness. Every ache, every silence, every moment of not knowing shaped you into someone more real. The pain you once tried to escape became the bridge to understanding, and the questions that haunted you turned into gentle truths. You now know that healing is not about becoming light. It is about learning to see it, even in the shadows. Now, every quiet moment feels different. The silence that used to scare you has become a companion. It no longer echoes with loneliness, but with peace. The stillness no longer feels empty. It feels alive, breathing softly with you. You understand now that you were never broken, only becoming. The journey was not about reaching somewhere else, but about returning to the self that waited patiently beneath all the noise. Take one more breath. Feel the light rest on your skin. You do not need to chase meaning or hold on to control. The sky outside is calm, and so are you. The weight you carried has become wisdom. The path you feared has become home. The silence you feared has become your teacher. Everything you seek outside has always lived within.